Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inky Thoughts podcast. Today, I have a very lovely guest in here that is actually a funny story of how she got to be on the podcast. Is that she messaged me originally, being a fan, very early subscriber, I would say, to this podcast, and giving me quite a lot of praise. So it's also a little bit of an ego massage for me. But I did then after the fact look at her profile and what she talked about and stuff like that, of how cool as a tattoo artist she was, and I simply couldn't resist inviting her on. So this might be a bit of a budding friendship episode, as well as one where hopefully there'll be something to learn. We're gonna talk a little bit about making a space, something I think is coming up a bit more in the tattoo industry nowadays, with making more space for diversity in different kinds of ways, not just the body types, but also people that might be somewhere on the spectrum, as some might say, or perhaps you could say neurodivergent, which is a bit of a broader term. But before I get too far into this, I think I should let Paula introduce herself. So if you please, Paula.
Yeah. Hi. So my name is Paula Castle. I own Black Sheep in Bristol. I've been tattooing for just over 10 years now. This is my 11th year. I am just about to turn 40, which I think is important for a number of reasons.
Yes.
Um, and I am both autistic and have ADHD.
Mm.
And only really got my kind of diagnosis for both of those in the last sort of 18 months or so.
Mm.
Um, and so it's been very much a process.
Well, yeah, but indeed, that's sort of echoes what at least in my profession of sociology, and also I would say in psychology, a lot more people have been putting attention on the fact that women especially get diagnosed much later in life for because of a lack of understanding when it comes to both women's physical health, physiologically speaking, but also women's mental health in general, because most of these models are sort of based on men from old school medicine and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And they've not, which might shock people out there, but this is actually true. They have yet to be updated very well.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
a lot of women, especially going into therapy or anything like that, or just seeing GPs about mental troubles they might have, especially. Uh, there's a lot of stuff where it's based on old models, based on men, and they might have a lot of trouble getting diagnosed, and especially diagnosed correctly.
Yeah, definitely. It's really, really common, especially for AFAB people. So
Mm,
that are assigned female at birth. I think it's very important
mm.
to make that distinction as well. So and
Aye,
when I talk about women, that's what I'm talking about.
aye,
Um,
aye.
anyone who identifies as or has in the past. Um, the the main thing is that you, as a kid, girls are taught, to behave in very different ways to
Mm,
boys, traditionally.
mm,
Um, and we are able to kind of the term that everyone hears now is mask, and we're taught to mask as
aye.
children because we are expected to behave in different ways. And
Mm,
also I think there's a really big kind of misconception with ADHD, especially in that
aye.
people say, "Oh, well, you're not running around with like crazy all the time with no attention span and blah blah blah." And the hyperactivity part of it in men is usually physical. In women, it tends to be our brains that are hyperactive. So
Mm,
it tends to manifest as quite severe anxiety for
aye.
women, um, which there are so many things that then come into play, things like hormonal contraception. Anybody who's increasing their hormone levels naturally, it does mask things like anxiety anyway. Um, and for me, I never knew until 2020 when I went through assessment, um, that all of the things that I saw as being like personal failings weren't actually because I was a shitty, lazy person. It's, the complete task paralysis that I get, and the
Aye.
executive function, which are not just around things that you don't want to do. It can literally be things you want to do and you can't physically move to do it. Those things for me, I think I'd coped with really well until I now know I actually began going into menopause.
Yeah.
And those drops in my hormone levels, suddenly just everything was exacerbated. I was having like palpitations to the point where I didn't feel safe driving. I was not sleeping. I had multiple kind of incidences with doctors where they thought that I had hand, foot, and mouth, which for for adults is like an infection in your heart,
I
which
don't. No, no, no. I laugh because I just imagine some British doctor basically calling you a cow. Like,
I know, yeah. So, like, and you can pick this up from children or people who have children that have it, because it's really
aye.
common among kids. And obviously, doing the job that we do, we are coming into contact with people who've got kids at home all the time. I don't
Oh
have
yeah.
children myself. And yeah, so all of this stuff, I ended up going through, MRI scans and,
Oi.
blood tests and steroid courses and all of this stuff, and all of these things happening at the same time as my ADHD diagnosis, and then my therapist telling me that I was autistic. And then finally now I've been diagnosed with perimenopause, and so the hormones are really helping with everything else. Like, I'm not
Mm.
medicated for my ADHD. I
Well,
tried it, it's not for me.
yeah,
uh,
neither for me.
and yeah, but the hormones have really helped. So as soon as I get my hormones balanced, I feel back to kind of my old self again, with my
Aye.
quirks that I'm learning to accept and love.
I mean, that is basically. I mean, do correct me if I'm wrong because I can only speak from my perspective, which is not. I can never say that I've been in the women's shoes or anything like that. I very much try to empathize. So if I say anything dumb, do correct me, Paula. But I would say that there's a lot of women where if there's more respect and like empathy put towards understanding how hormones affect women quite severely at times, there could be a lot more empathy shown towards
Yeah,
towards
there's no
anyone
reason.
anyone AFAB as you describe it as well. Because even something as simple as some women having extremely severe menstrual cycles, so to speak, or periods. Uh, that can give all sorts of mood swings, all sorts of health issues, all sorts of stuff. Whereas if you have the time to pause and be like, "Oh, great, yeah, hormones are kind of important here. Let's help out and be empathetic," it helps quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And the latest research, because there is very, very little
Yeah,
research. Women's,
bafflingly so. Still quite
yeah,
little research in this.
it's outrageous, really, when you
Mm.
think that menopause is something that affects 52% of the population.
Yeah.
And so many women quit their jobs. They have to quit their
Right.
jobs. The rate of suicide among perimenopausal women
Oof.
is absolutely gross. Like, it's horrible.
Yeah.
um and yeah, like you said, this is just an area where there isn't really any research, but the latest
Mm.
research to come out has shown, actually, they've now discovered that there are estrogen receptors in pretty much every
Mm.
tissue in a woman's body. So
Oh.
every single cell in our body has an estrogen receptor, and it is just it goes way, way deeper than reproductive health, basically.
I'd
um,
imagine.
so yeah, so it is kind of exciting that it is something that there's a lot of people pushing to do more with.
Mm.
And I'm really hoping that with my kind of generation, so I'm an elder millennial, the old people.
I can't remember where I fit on that. I know I'm a millennial, but I'm born in 1990, so I don't. I think I may just scrape by.
Oh no, you're like a proper millennial. I'm a
Mm.
I'm an elder, so I'm 1984. I'm
Mm.
the first year of being a
Right,
millennial.
right, right, right,
Um and yeah, and
right.
it's yeah, I'll get my walking stick.
That's
Um
rough enough as it is.
I know. But I'm hoping, we as a collective we tend to be a lot more kind of outspoken the older we
Right.
get as women. And I'm really hoping that we're now in an age where, people are able to be more open about it, because we need to like stop the stigma around discussing that stuff. There's so much
Uh,
linking to sort of misogyny and things like that, but it's not something I shy away from discussing
mm.
in my studio, and I make sure
No,
everybody
that's awesome.
knows, like, if you need
Well,
to tell one of the guys that you need some space because you're having really bad period pains, tell them that. Don't make
mm.
things up. Don't sugarcoat it. Like, they need to know this is a
I mean,
normal.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that. And I think I'll probably get crucified for this as well, but I think especially in certain industries like the tattoo industry, sometimes there's still sort of like this inadvertent sugarcoating where there's a lot of being careful with, especially the older generation of men's sensitivities and egos and stuff like that regarding women and their space in the community, in the industry, and also their health and all that. Well, there's a lot of that mentality of like, oh, just suck it up. You wanted to be here. It's like, yeah, but so what? So if you break your leg and you can't come into work and it's just suck it up. That's sadly, as I see it, also tied to this, which I think is worse in America, but it seems to be just universal in the tattoo industry sometimes. This American mentality for like, you gotta work all the time, every hour of the day, constantly. Although that some of that is built in to the profession,
Mhm.
but there's this sort of socially constructed idea of how much you need to sacrifice constantly to prove
Yeah,
your
the
worth
whole
being in the industry.
the whole like hustle culture and grind culture thing is so toxic and
Yeah.
it's so unhealthy. One thing that I think especially like Northern Europeans really do get right is the more of a work-life balance.
I
Um,
mean, yeah, but it's also just I have met and known some Americans, like for example Robbie, who was in the first episode. He's
mm,
very key on saying he's good at that, but he doesn't expect everybody else to, like, if you're satisfied with what you earn and how much money you're making and all that, cool. Then you work that amount. Like you agree on that stuff. And I think another guy I've interviewed recently called Christian, known as Nuke Milk, he was the same. It's like, hey, I'll tell you what we expect of you, but if you and you'll tell me what you want to put in, but
mhm.
he'll only like tell you to do more if you're like, oh, I don't earn enough money. All right, cool. Then you need to figure something out. But if you're satisfied, and that's what I think it should always be like in this industry where you have so much freedom in a way. If you're satisfied with what you're earning and how your time is scheduled, then why not do that? Like, why not stay there? That you don't need a fucking Lamborghini or free
This,
houses and all that shit.
yeah, this is exactly it, and I think it links into that question that I feel everybody should ask themselves, which is, what does
Yeah,
success mean to you?
yeah,
Because success doesn't have to mean finance.
yeah.
Success can be anything. It
Mm.
it doesn't even have to be success in the traditional
No,
meaning.
no, no, absolutely not.
Um, you know, Success for me is more of a simple life. I want and unfortunately, money gives you freedom,
Yeah,
and freedom gives you the ability to have a more simple life.
aye,
Um, because we live in a capitalist hellscape.
yeah.
So there isn't really an option.
I think
Um,
we very much agree in this one. Like, I also just dream of being comfortable. I have no big ambitions of being wealthy.
no, I have no
Like,
interest in that.
I just like to be able to afford somewhere to live in my life, and not
Yeah,
just afford to survive, but live. That's it. That
yeah.
doesn't
I
take
want to
much,
be able to
but
afford to see the places that I want to see in the world and
yeah,
to take care of the people that need to be taken care of.
yeah.
Um, but hoarding wealth doesn't appeal to me at all. I have no interest.
But I also
Um,
think, and I may assume too much now, but it's just my own experience of people I've met in the industry. I think that's also a thing that some people are annoyed with women in the industry about, because you guys always seem more tuned into that. Like, you always seem way more focused and like, hey, I just want to live in a way where I can be myself and do something I like. That's it.
mhm.
I mean, that's just my experience, but
Yeah, I
I'm very
agree.
much most
I think,
female tattoo artists I've met. I have met some that are also like hustle culture and all that shit. You do beat them and see them, but way more female tattooers I've met are way more happy about just living a comfortable life, doing
I
something
think
that
there's
they love.
something to be said for people being in touch more with their own spirituality and actually understanding their place in the world and being comfortable with that. I don't know if that's necessarily something that's more likely for women, but I think
Well,
it's more a case of there's probably far more female tattooers that have allowed themselves
yeah.
to step away from societal norms
Aye.
and ask themselves what it is that they really
Uh,
want.
I mean, it's the same thing I see with. I mean, I've done these interviews early on, but I'm not out yet. They will be out when this episode comes out. But the same thing I noticed with some of the African American tattoo artists I've talked to. That even though they might live lavishly, that none of them are like, "Oh, I want to be a fucking billionaire" or something like that. Or if that, because I think with a lot of marginalized groups, both women, queer people, trans people, any marginalized groups stepping into any industry, they're often way more comfortable just carving out their space and being able to live and make a living by something they love.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
a lot of cisgendered men like myself don't have the same automatic adversary, like adverse antagonized position
Yeah,
when they step into the tattoo industry, so that they find other things. Like they have a way easier time saying, "Oh yeah, no, I'm already here, so I'm just gonna,"
yeah.
you know,
And I
the,
think
the focus is somewhere else from the beginning in a way.
yeah, and there's a huge amount of that is going to be linked into internalized misogyny without people even realizing, even the most forward thinking man can have areas of their
Oh,
life they
absolutely.
don't realize that they are coming from a very traditional place rather than actually just a level of equality.
Hmm.
um, and that with being autistic, there's definitely a way that I think, and the vast majority of other autistic people that I know, not every autistic person,
No,
we're
no,
not
no.
all the same, we're very different people. But generally speaking, to me the world is very black and white. There aren't really gray
Hmm.
areas. There's right and there's wrong, and
Hmm.
then logical thinking is just the way my brain works. I'm very
Hmm.
honest, I'm very upfront. I realize a lot of people don't like that and it makes them uncomfortable. I personally find the opposite to be true. People who you can't get like a read on them
Aye.
um, make me very nervous. And I think that's a really common misconception about autistic people, that we're
Aye.
unable to read the room or that we're tone deaf. And I think that varies wildly between the genders. And actually, especially women with autism are quite the opposite. And we're usually very empathetic and extremely tuned in to people.
Aye.
Um, and I have learned now, it's took me 39 years, but I trust my gut every time now because it's
Aye.
never wrong. The only thing that ever happens is other people tell me it's wrong until
I
I'm proven.
mean, yeah.
So I'm not, yeah, I'm very much whatever my gut tells me, I'm just gonna go with that.
I mean, that's a good way to live, I think. I mean, it at least also secures that you're gonna be comfortable with the decisions you make as well.
Yeah, yeah,
And more often than it might else happen, I think you'll land in positions where you're actually comfortable being in them.
yeah, yeah. This is
I,
it.
I would that would at least be the guess I would hazard as a guy with some level of expertise in identity and culture and social interactions and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that might also be why you're good. You might be good at making your tattoo studio this kind of space you've sort of created in it now, from what I
Yeah,
can tell.
it's kind of funny, isn't it? Like most days, somebody's client will, take me to one side in the studio and be like, "Oh, it's so lovely in here. I've never been in a tattoo studio like this before." And there's a lot of places that have very like clearly tried to emulate what I have done, which is absolutely fine.
Nice.
But there's no sort of the way I have my studio and the way I have things set up for people, it's not contrived. It's very much, I have everything set up the way I would like it to be.
Mm.
I was coming to get tattooed. And I feel like that makes it far more likely that you're going to attract people that are of a similar mindset as
Well,
you.
absolutely.
Um,
I could find articles that would show the same, not with tattoo studios, but would show absolutely the same theories within sociology that often you would imagine communities, we sort of attract people of birds of a feather sort of principle.
Yeah.
When we are very honest with ourselves, we also can sometimes meet people that are in the same way, or at least like that type of person.
Yeah. And there's a huge amount of my clients that are also autistic or have ADHD,
Mm.
which is so interesting. You know, when you start to really think about it, I really do think that neurodivergent people are, you know, attracted like a magnet to other neurodivergent people. We
Oh,
have
I thought you was
weird.
I thought you were going to say tattoos and body art, because I also think they're
No, I
very
think we
attracted to
are
that.
definitely, but like I think that we almost have like a radar for
Aye.
one another, you know, and it does end up being very kind of natural. You know, I've had this conversation with someone very recently who I've been friends with for 4 or 5 years now, I think.
Oh, that's
And we sat down the other day, and she's very recently kind of realizing that she's autistic. And I said, did you never think about why you and I became friends? Like, we don't have anything in common. We're so different in our interests and things like that, but it just works. And she was like, yeah, I
oh,
didn't really thought about it like that before, but you're right. And I was like, yeah, there's got to be a common denominator. There's
aye.
always something, you know?
I mean, absolutely. But also think back to what you said about your studio and how people are copying it. That I think that's a very good symptom of at least a positive development I'm seeing in the industry, internationally speaking now. That there are way more places that it's not necessarily that they want to brand themselves as a safe space or anything like that, but they are just creating more open studios. That they're creating studios that are way more welcoming to a wider variety of people. Or they're doing another thing, which is also pretty cool. That they're like, hey, this is this type of studio, and I will attract this type of clientele. Because the whole fear that sometimes occurs in the industry, when I look at it from the outside, of like, oh, there's another shop opening, so now I'm gonna lose business. I don't think that's the case, because when you, for example, shape your shop the way you've done it, you're
Mhm.
attracting the type of clientele that the others never attracted.
Yeah.
It's not taken away from anybody else. It's opening up doors for other people that might otherwise have been too scared or too uncomfortable to go and get a tattoo.
Exactly that. And like I've always maintained throughout my whole career that what other people's success has got no bearing
Mm.
on your own. And the
Right.
only people who find themselves miserable and jealous and unhappy are people who spend far too much time looking out instead of looking in. Like,
Mm.
you have to make peace with the fact that you can't affect anyone else's perception or idea or decision about anything, really. They are always going to have their own view of you,
Mm.
you know, based on what they choose to see and take in.
Right.
So all you can do is, if you know you're authentically putting out there who you are, then you're always going to attract people that feel the same as you. And that's
Right.
when you feel like you're in a safe place. Because I have a controversial take about the safe space thing.
Mhm.
So I don't
We do
I
like a controversial take at times.
well, yeah, and I think, for me personally, it's a red flag if anybody says my place is a safe space,
Mm.
because you don't get to say that it is.
That's actually a good point that I at least think we would make as well as sociology. At least some sociologists would make that it's very much something like this. It's the same almost as with stigma. You don't get to decide if you're stigmatized. You
Mhm.
can pick up on it if you
Yeah.
are, and but it's really other people that decide if there's a stigma to some
Yeah,
extent.
totally. Like, I don't get to say that my studio is a safe space for these people and these people and these people. All I can do is try my best to create somewhere
Mm.
that shows that it would
Yeah.
be. But it's not until those marginalized people feel comfortable
Mm.
and happy in that place that it is a safe space.
Aye.
And the people who feel that they need to shout about it are usually the people that aren't doing it, you know? It's more actions and less talk,
I
you
mean,
know?
I very much agree with the latter part. I've not got enough experience with people shouting it out. At least might have not noticed it too much to know if that theory holds up. But I very much could see it be the case. Because often advertisement is the case that if you see something becoming more popular or more open or more noticeable, you advertise in a way that because you might fear losing clientele, that you can lure them in, so to speak. So it very much makes sense.
Yeah, I think that for me comes off the back of being like a long-term vegan. Like I've seen
Okay.
veganism become this thing that's just people are just desperate for the green pound constantly. You know,
Mm.
so many Jeffree Star. Can I name like a person? Is that
I
allowed?
mean, what you do, that's up to you.
Okay. So for example,
I'm
Jeffree
not gonna
Star.
censor what people say. I will warn you, I'm not good at editing, so it's not gonna be bleeped or anything later on.
So
So.
that's fine. Like I don't mind. I don't mind. So, like for example, I mean, his cosmetics company is pretty much done now anyway.
All right.
But a few years ago, vegans were going crazy for his like vegan cosmetics, and I was just like, yeah, but look, he's out in Hollywood with a brand new crocodile handbag wearing real fur. Just because
All
his products are vegan, you're putting that money in his pocket, and then
right.
he's going and spending it on horrific animal cruelty.
All
It's not just about the fact that you're buying something that says vegan on it, or buying into a studio that says we're a safe space, safe for everybody. If that's not the conversation that's happening when the doors are closed, then it's
right.
not a safe place.
Aye,
you
exactly.
know it has
I
to
know,
be.
I fully agree with that. And funny enough, with the vegan thing, there's also a pet peeve of mine at one point because I know some of the science behind inks and that because I've worked with chemists and all stuff like that beforehand. Not that I have much success in my career, but behind the scenes and unpaid and stuff like that, I've had some very cool interactions with dermatologists, researchers, too, and chemists and all that. And the tattoo inks were pretty much already vegan, so it was very funny to them when people started advertising vegan tattoo ink
Yeah,
because most of the pigments are not derived from any animal parts of any kind.
yeah, exactly. And
That was very much a green bait kind of thing, if you ask me, because at one point, at least to me, even though I'm not a tattoo artist, no matter where you look, people were advertising this is a vegan ink, this is a vegan aftercare cream, and I don't know the aftercare cream business is less animal fat stuff. I'd be used to some of those, so it might be very relevant there, but it still just seems to be everywhere suddenly. Everybody was advertising, oh, this is vegan. People might almost have advertised that a tattoo machine was vegan. Like that's where I got to, right? Like,
it's like the equivalent of people advertising gluten-free rice cakes.
oh,
Like, shut up.
that's
Stop.
I mean personally, especially might be especially because I'm a Danish person, but anything gluten free is just gonna be boring.
Yeah, it's so boring. I
I
agree.
mean,
And it's also
whew.
actually really dangerous for people to exclude gluten from their
Oh,
diet.
absolutely. If you're not a
Yeah,
celiac, it's actually not good for you to
it isn't at all.
but but we're gonna digress.
I
Oh,
know, I know. I'm
let's
terrible.
not. It's
Sorry,
not
I need
fair to go down
wrangling.
the pastry route with a Danish person. They're gonna expect us to keep on track, and we gotta be off on
Oh
it.
dear. But yeah, so the
But I
there
get
is
what you mean. Like there's certain levels of sometimes false advertisement, even if it's not meant in a sinister way. It might be done out of a fear of losing clientele or not keeping up, but it's still done in a very misunderstood and ignorant way that can end up causing harm, even inadvertently.
yeah, it is. And it makes people nervous. It's kind of
Right.
along the same lines as the people who edit the hell out of their photos before they post them and things like that. It's all of it is just obtaining business by deception.
Right.
You've got to be authentic, because if you're authentic, then you will attract the people that you want to be
Well,
around anyway.
absolutely.
So
And that's the only true thing that a lot of the, oh, I'm never going to get any of them on the podcast now, but I kind of don't care. So I've sort of had it with them lately. But a lot of the business money gurus in the tattoo industry lately, the only true thing they say, which I will agree with, is the ones of them that advertise being your authentic self. Very
yeah,
important, especially in the creative industry, I would argue.
yeah,
I know I'm not working in it, but every single person I've observed as a fan for many years, as one that's been around the block in the tattoo world, that has always more as it comes to success. It's never somebody that just models themselves after other people.
yes,
They might gain money, but they always end up feeling lost, or with a term from sociology, they're sort of feeling disenfranchised from themselves. They
yeah.
feel sort of removed from themselves, and then they end up being depressed or stressed or stuff because they can't recognize themselves anymore. And money doesn't help that.
No, it doesn't. It's like empty soul calories, you know?
Yeah.
You're not, taking in good, healthy, fibrous, good
Uh,
stuff that's going to keep you going.
as with Robbie Ripple, I'm very happy you're here to translate for this atheist towards the more spiritual crowd.
Yeah, do you know what? I love Robbie anyway. So
Robbie
yeah.
is fantastic. I mean, I'm always down to give Robbie a little bit of a shout out because he was also day one, even though he was on my previous tattoo podcast I did years ago, the tank, because I thought I was going to go do a PhD and that was going to be the big thing and all that shit. He was immediately when I said I'm starting up again, I didn't message him. He messaged me on that and said, I want to be on it again.
Oh yeah,
He's a good guy.
yeah. I have a great photograph of him that he signed for me. And did you ever
Oh,
see like a flyer that he did that was like him doing the Kim Kardashian champagne thing?
yep, yep.
I have it framed. Um, yeah.
I hope Robbie sees
It's
this
just
episode
great,
now.
you've got to
I
laugh.
very much hope Robbie watches this episode now. I might have to make this one of the trailers just to make him watch it.
It's a classic. It's a
but
classic.
but Robbie's actually a perfect example of what you're talking about because Robbie's never advertised this is a safe space ratting. He just acts it.
Yeah.
He he just very clearly by everything else he does, he's just like, hey, we have a tattoo artist for you if you want to sit there and shit talk and all that. We also have a tattoo artist for you if you want to sit there and have a quiet time and anything like that. And he's very, fucking, he could do it all, Robbie, basically. But he's actually quite a good example of it.
Yeah.
He would
Definitely.
he wouldn't need to advertise this is a safe space. I would be very baffled if I walked into Reading
Gives me a
and
weird
saw
vibe.
somebody not respecting somebody, especially Robbie with both the heart now and I can't remember what it says his new tattoo. He's got the new pink face one. That was also some sort. Knowing him, it's some sort of loving message.
So, I mean, my forehead tattoo says forgive.
All right, you don't need to brag because I don't have a forehead tattoo yet. Fuck me, man.
But yeah, you said something earlier about
Yes.
opening kind of the door. I think you said something about like opening up tattooing. And I think
Not as such, but
I can't think what you said, but it made me think, one of the first
yes.
things that I did when I opened my current space, because we moved in 2020,
Aye.
to now I have like a proper, street front shop.
Aye.
Um, and one thing that I really want to stop is like this whole frosted windows thing for tattoo shops. Like, stop making it look like a massage parlor. Like, be
Aye.
proud, have artwork that people can see. Let
Aye.
them see the warm, kind of inviting
Mm.
space that it is.
I actually wrote a research article on this when I did my master's degree at one point.
Yeah.
About because already back then we were starting to see a wave of more open shops in the way they designed them and the windows and stuff and all that stuff. And I think it's sadly, no, not sadly, because to each their own. I don't think they're going to do very well in the end. They might have a little enclave on clientele they can survive on, but I think some shops are very much now with some people leaning more conservative nowadays as well, trying to grasp this old '90s vibe again with shutters at the window or basement
Yeah.
space preferably, or no tattooing in the front, only in the back and stuff like that. Like there's some of these shops still popping up where I always think that the places that do best are the ones that model themselves more modernly in a way. Open spaces with waiting areas, something inviting and coming in, a reception area of some kind, windows you can see through, as you point out as well. Fine if you will have some art on them, like some nice fucking window dressing or something like that, but the whole making the windows non-see-through.
Yeah, it's really strange, I think. And like on my sign that's says black sheep,
Aye,
it says female owned on there as well.
aye.
Which I've only had like one person be kind of shitty about it.
That surprises me.
Yeah,
I'm happy to hear that. Like that's a
yeah,
positive surprise, but that still sadly today surprises me a little bit. Because even some of the less, I would say, for lack of a better way of describing it, feminist women I've met in the industry can get a lot of shit thrown at them just for being a woman in the industry still today.
Oh, there are definitely a lot of kind of, I would say, more kind of heteronormative mask, tattooers who really hate me for no, like they literally have never had a conversation with me, but they hate me. And that for me says way more about them than it does about me.
Well, absolutely. It's the same thing with, and that was the only reason I wanted Ryan Choi on the podcast at one point, even though he's one of these big influencers and teaching people to earn six figures a week and all that hustle culture stuff. But it's because he said something that I really loved about how he wanted tattooers to go from pirates to professionals.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's still people romanticizing the pirate era. But the thing is, when you look at it economically and historically, I think Matt Lotter even talked about this at one point. They were earning way less than they do today, just on average.
Yeah, totally.
And even and with inflation, you can't do that now. Like it is a deficit. Being a pirate tattooer, that'll work for you in your teens if you're some self-taught hippie that wants to travel around fucking Europe backpacking and shit like that. Be my guest, but actually being like the whole pirate antisocial tattoo thing, it doesn't work. And
No.
I even spoke with Delphine about this, and so I'm fine. Some people have the clientele and they can very much keep their space, and keep that. But for others, it will not work. I'm very confident about that. For others, especially people starting out that haven't built a clientele over years and years of tattooing, being a pirate or being antisocial is just not going to help you out.
Yeah, totally. And it's got that same kind of thing of, there are people right now with 100,000 followers on Instagram that haven't got any bookings this week,
Aye.
like all of that stuff is just it's so fake. Like it doesn't matter. People will remember your attitude far longer than they remember.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the experience is 50%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I don't think for one second that I'm, the greatest tattooer in the world. I don't think that I'm amazing, but I know that my clients absolutely love me and they love the experience that they get. And that's so lovely. Like what
Absolutely.
a fantastic legacy to know you've left is that, to be thought
Fully
of
agree.
by people. What else is there?
Well, it's the same thing with my podcast here. Even if it never got popular, the one thing I'm very happy about is that I've yet to have anybody that didn't afterwards. And now I'm really massaging my own ego again for once, which I'm not good at, but I'll try. Is that people enjoy being on it.
Yeah.
And even though I don't always fully agree with people, we always have a nice, well argued and friendly discussion instead of a screaming match or anything like that,
Well, I mean, your background is sociology, mine is history. So of course we're literally trained at arguing.
That is also true.
Yeah.
Though I will say I'm not as good at it as some academics I know.
No, I definitely am not. But I found it far easier to deal with things that were dead and buried rather than people that are still around.
Yeah, I think I should have done history as well.
You mentioned earlier about some tattoo shops still being these places where things like menstrual cycles and menopause and things like that shouldn't be discussed, and they're still like a taboo.
Aye.
To me, I believe that within a tattoo studio and amongst tattooers, we are and should behave like doctors. Human bodies should be nothing more than science. They're not, there shouldn't be any weirdness around any bodily function or any body type, because it's just, they're just skin sacks.
I mean, I may have exaggerated a bit to prove a point. I'm not sure that's the same shyness as they used to be.
I agree with you. I agree.
I still think there is, this sort of overprotectiveness in general in society still of men's sensibilities, at least in some countries. Like, I think Scotland would actually be a bad example because they started the whole free tampons in every open space now and all that stuff. Like, so I was about to use Scotland, but that's actually a very bad example. They're doing very well on this.
Just use England. It's always the shit one.
Yeah, honestly, I don't want to do it because I actually have English friends that I really like, and England is nice to visit. For me, I'm not sure I would ever live there again, but yeah, yeah.
Um,
But I think people are trying though. Also, male tattooers, especially younger male tattooers entering the space nowadays. I think way more people are trying, and might just also have better sensibilities, anyways. Even just almost by default nowadays.
yeah,
So
definitely.
even
And
without trying, I think some younger tattooers are just doing better on a lot of this.
yeah, for sure. There's definitely a marked change. I think I mentioned to you before, there's been a sudden change for me in the amount of men that
Aye,
I tattoo. And I think that that shows that there is a
aye,
change,
aye.
there is movement. It's very easy for us to think that everything's doom and gloom if we just
Aye.
concentrate on the
Or to
negative.
put up these sites and all that stuff,
Yeah.
all that. Yeah.
But there are positives and
Aye.
good things changing in.
Absolutely. And even among older, more veteran tattooers, I mean, we talked about Robbie earlier, Dirk Morrison as well, I would say, and Lal Hardy too as well. Like some of these are also very good at this. Like they're very good at learning new tricks, so to speak, to
Yeah,
put a
Lal
twist
is
on the old saying. It's
Lal
not
is a very
all.
progressive
It's
tattooer.
even though we say what we do in this episode, it's not. It's never all. Like we paint with a wide brush because it's difficult to sit and use
Yes.
everyone's individual names or point out individual people all the time. But even among the old timers, there's people trying and reinventing themselves and retraining, so to speak,
Yeah,
the way they look at the
definitely.
world.
And
Uh,
I will always, I have so much more respect for anybody who says, do you know what? I used to think this way, but I was wrong.
I I mean,
Like
even I've
that
done
to
that.
me.
Even just doing the PhD at one point, my female supervisors pointed out something, but I never thought that was like anywhere near like being misogynist or anything like that. And they were like, "This is very like male centered." I was like, "Fuck, I never thought about that." And then I started thinking about it, and
Yeah.
changed my ways.
But there's also, there's a big difference, which is why I mean, I really hate cancel culture because I think all it
Aye,
does is put down debate and learning.
aye,
If you just cancel somebody and like call them out and shout about things, you're not helping to you're not helping to educate somebody. And I understand that then people say, "Oh, it's not my responsibility, it's not my emotional labor," but it kind of is. Like if you're someone who's vocal about things on the internet,
aye,
if you're vocal and you've got the emotional energy and labor to shout at someone and call them out, then you
aye.
should also have the emotional spoons to be able to spend some time sending somebody here. Why don't you have a read of this? Here's a good
Oh,
YouTube you could watch. Here's a book you could read. I
aye.
hope that you have a better day than you have. That's way better than it is to just comment on something and flame somebody.
I mean, when you put it like that, I fully agree. At first, I was like, hey, I don't want to have that responsibility just for being on the internet. I'm not very confrontational. That's why I do the podcast the way I do.
But it's so I'm like for
But I get
my
what you mean. Like, if you already have that sort of energy to spend going and commenting on some tattoo, or that, hey, why the fuck did you do this? Or hey, you shouldn't. Why not instead,
yeah
take a moment out, message them and say, hey, why are you using this mag? Shouldn't you be using this mag for doing this thing? Like, or
Yeah,
whatever,
or like, why, you know, it's the old tropes, isn't it? Of like, why are you taking a photograph of this girl with no top on when you
Mm.
did a tattoo on her belly button? Like, stop.
Yeah.
What are you doing? You just look ridiculous.
I mean, as
Um,
much as I like scantily clad women with tattoos, I do get the point. Like,
yeah, like, but
there's a
it's
time
but
and a
at the end of
place.
the day, it's not, yeah, like it's not that that person is it you're in a position of power as a
Aye,
tattooer. It is always your responsibility to make
aye,
sure you are, you know, protecting each person's
yeah,
body and mental health at all
yeah.
times. Like it's really important. The thing with my apprenticeship, I didn't have the best apprenticeship, I didn't have the worst apprenticeship, but the thing that really stood out to me throughout was I was always told your client is your responsibility. Their
Mm.
health, their well-being, and their mental capacity are always the first
Well,
thing.
yeah, they're surrendering their bodies for you. To put it in a weird way, you literally have the ability to ruin their body right there and then.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
whether they can afford laser or not, it's not something that's going to be easily fixed, and it can be traumatizing for them. So even if you don't want to be a pocket psychologist or anything like that, or but not even talk, it's just very basic. Like even when I talked with Robbie about in the first episode, we keep referencing Robbie, so he's going to be very happy about this. It's not, you don't have to go. crazy far. It's just basic human like decency, being respectful, paying mind to how the client's feeling. Like how some of the tourists have been with me, if they see I'm starting to distress or anything, well, they don't know me, what my body and how I'm feeling, so they'll ask. They'll be like, "Hey, do you need a break? Can you go on? How are we feeling right now? Do you need to go get a snack? What's happening?" Even
Yeah.
just something as basic as that. Because you do see some tattoos, and they do pop up on my Instagram as well sometimes. That are just like, no, fucking just slide that bitch. I fucking hate when the client wants to get up or stop mid. Like, I get, and I always like when a tattooer politely says, hey, mate, can I just 10 more minutes finish this line and then we have a break, you have a snack? Oh, that I get. But forcing it on the client, being like, hey, just lie there, just take it.
Yeah.
That's
Just
fucked up.
it's gross and
Because even
weird.
if they pay for it, they surrender their body to you, and you in that moment, technically speaking, have full autonomy to do whatever you want.
Of course you do.
You
It's,
could fuck up the
and
whole thing.
always be with your,
Exactly. So
you know.
very much agree there. And the reason I'm trying to explain it this way is that a lot of people misunderstand when people like you and me talk about this, that we want them to sit there and be a therapist. And
Yes.
that's not at all
We
what I'm
are.
saying. If you want to do that, and some people enjoy that a lot, like again, man, I'm such a Robbie fanboy. He likes doing that, but that doesn't mean that everybody else has to do that.
No,
Like
exactly.
you, shit, man, you're also a human being. You don't have to just accept a trauma dump on you if that's not how you feel like, or if you can't handle that.
Yeah.
But you can still, I would at least vouch for vouch and say you can still give basic human decency and be like, hey, do you need a break? Do you need to go have a piss? Do you need to like pay attention to the signs your client is giving you?
100%. And learning to like read clients' body language.
Oh yeah, especially
It's
with newer,
so
younger clients, because they are very nervous coming in, a lot of them, and they do not know. Like I remember getting my first tattoo. I barely spoke for that 1.5 hour. Like
me
I would
too.
have not dared to say anything back then in 2008, because I don't care how friendly or not they are. I was a very green fucking person going in to get a tattoo, my first one,
Yeah.
and I was just so nervous that I didn't know what to say.
I was just this little awkward emo scene kid who had a lip piercing and didn't
Oh, I
know
want a
anything
picture of
about
that.
tattoos. Like it was pretty scary, these people, these tattooers were all so cool and like I'm not cool enough to be in here and and I am very much someone, I don't tattoo many people under 30 now. I would say my clients have kind of grown with me. Um, but when I do get younger clients,
Right.
I kind of mm, I think I have to use a lot more of my kind of slight therapizing because
Aye.
they are the ones who constantly apologize for just literally
Oh, so
everything.
much. And I think
It
with the
makes so
way,
much.
like there's a lot of really positive social media going around nowadays. You, for example, a girl from Germany I'm going to be interviewing next week called Carly as well. Like to try and explain that people don't need to apologize. Even a lot of male tattooers are explaining this nowadays. And I'm really happy to see that. But for a long time, and it still also goes on, there's a lot of people that do the opposite thing.
Mhm.
Not purposely. It's not like they make videos where it's just like, hey, if you're the client, you should just shut the fuck up. If they are, I luckily haven't seen them. But with other things they do inadvertently,
Yes.
like
Yeah, yeah,
talking
yeah. It's
about
like,
like sharing these stories about, oh, I had this annoying client, he just wouldn't shut the fuck up. Seeing those stories makes potential clients very nervous.
it's just
But again,
business as well.
I'll say something very interesting now. If you're fine with that and not getting those clients, be my guest to keep it going.
Yeah, I'm very much like, if that's who you are, say it with your chest. I would much
Yeah,
rather you make it very clear to people who you are so people don't end up with a traumatic experience that
yeah.
someone like me has to
Exactly.
do.
Because I'm fine with that. I'm also fine with the old school shops, or if you just wanted to two men, but then say it. Be honest.
Yeah.
Have a sign in your window saying male only. Because I think there should be space for everybody. Also, people that want the rougher, like old school, gritty experience. Fine, but then be honest about it, as you say, because then you avoid some young person misunderstanding it, coming in and having the fucking most traumatic tattoo experience of their life.
And I've had that, I end up doing cover-ups on people that where it's been 10 years since they got tattooed
Ooh,
because the experience was so
yeah.
horrifying that they never felt comfortable until they've had, somebody's told them about me and then shown them my cover up work and then shown them who I am. And they've been like coming in to see me. I've had people that are traumatized because there is a kind of a thing that can happen in kind of traumatic relationships whereby people will insist on a partner being branded by a tattoo artist and those kinds of tattoos are so traumatic on so many levels. And I have covered up some horrendous things. Well, obviously I never post anything about that on Instagram because I would never.
It would at least require their permission, ethically speaking.
Yes, exactly. But that is really, really commonplace, and like I get angry on their behalf.
Sadly, as a sociologist, having researched tattoos and that, and especially been interested in the phenomenon called reclaiming identity, which comes a lot from feminist work and especially women getting tattooed. And there's so many sexual assault survivors or traumatic relationship survivors, all that stuff that get cover-up tattoos because they've been branded in one way or another or been forced to get certain tattoos. In other cases, there's also not been allowed to get tattoos.
Yes. Yeah. There's such a red flag if you get someone that's like, oh, do you mind if I just see what my husband thinks of the placement and stuff? I'm just like, I don't. Not my place to tell you why that's not okay.
And funny thing, I've had that experience with my ex from way back. I've been single almost 9 years, but when we just started dating, and we were both from Denmark, but we met in England. She was doing a semester over there. I was doing my last year of my 3-year undergrad. And at one point, while it was still new in the first half-year relationship, she was visiting me in England. She was back in Denmark at that time. And she said, if you ever get hand tattoos, I'm going to break up with you. Because she found hand tattoos ugly. And I should have known back then, even 22 years old at the time. That's a red flag. But I was very young and very lonely. So I stayed in that relationship way longer than I should have. Lasted almost 2 years. So that was 1.5 years, over 2 years. So that was more than 1.5 years on top of that. But that's the thing, noticing it back now, it also happens to men sometimes.
Oh God, yeah.
Absolutely.
Like literally, it doesn't have a
especially, and I'll happily admit this, soft boys like me who very much, at least outside of the bedroom, are very amicable, so to say.
Yeah, no, there's also like so many guys who
we also even hear from older stories where it's like, oh, the wife would kill me if I got that tattoo.
Yes, literally that. That's what I was
trying to say. That shouldn't be the case. This is your body.
I will literally come with my chin and my throat. He didn't even know I was getting it done until like the day before. And I was like, I told you, didn't I? And he's like, no.
Now I have to ask, because I always find this so fascinating, because I see it mainly happening with women nowadays, where it used to be men, and for a whole different, much more toxic reason. Is your partner tattooed?
Yeah, he has got he's got like a sleeve and some bits and bobs on his legs, and then I've done 2 pieces on his arms.
But you might have seen it in the episode with Becky that we sort of talked about it a little bit. Because especially in the 90s, there were so many men that were like, no, I can have tattoos. She can't.
Yeah, but then also now I think we've swung the other way with women with tattoos.
There's a lot of women as well that date black boys. Like a lot of heavily tattooed women that date absolutely black boys, and they just want them to stay black. And hey, to each their own. As long as it's not for some toxic reason, you do you. If that's your preference.
I don't know what I don't think I've seen someone naked without tattoos in
I have. Not because I want to, but I have, sadly.
No, I think it's been that long. I don't even know.
Oh, since we're getting into funny old anecdotes, I think I mentioned this in an episode already, but I did have the experience once of taking my shirt off when I was younger, though, with a one-night stand. And as soon as I took it off, because I didn't have full sleeves at the time, so you couldn't see that, and I was wearing like something more like a hoodie, I took off my shirt. He was like, whoa, that's a lot more than I thought there was.
Yeah, that's quite a nice.
I was like, nice. Okay. Yeah, there is. But it did for one moment look like she was going to be like, whoa, that's a lot, and like leave.
There that like makes me think of, it's one of the funniest things that people, I think people say it without thinking about what they're going to say.
Aye.
But you'll get people that will say it in tattoo shop environments all the time, where you'll be talking about placement, and then you'll say, you know, have you thought about what you want to do with like the rest of your arm? Like, you know, where are we going to want to put anything in future? Do you intend to get more? And people sometimes will go, oh no, I don't think I'm the type to get covered in tattoos. And you know, when you're kind of like, nah, it's fine, just leave
I
it.
have, I have to respectfully disagree
Really?
to some extent, but it's only because I'm a sociologist that I've, you know, looked at some of the statistics and all that of it. And most people don't get many tattoos; they just get a few. But I will say this, which semi agrees with what you're saying. There's a lot more people that after dipping their toe in the water, suddenly realize how much they like it.
Yeah.
And they may for the first few tattoos, because I did that too, say like, oh, I'm only gonna get a couple more. And then they get those couple more, and then it becomes, fuck it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was laughing yesterday. I've got my friend Anya, who's over here guesting from Poland at the moment. So she's staying with me. And she's actually at the studio with my husband. He's took her there.
No.
Because it's my day off.
Oh, fair
And
enough.
we were talking about it yesterday, and I said, oh, imagine how amazing it could be if you could just like dunk yourself into like a bleach bath and start again. Like, imagine
Oh,
how amazing
no.
that would be.
Here's the thing, and I might be a weirdo here. I wouldn't like that because I also really love this. Like, I go way more for the analogy of if we could just, you know, unzip this,
Oh,
put on a
put
fresh one, and
another
then,
one. Oh, I like that
because
idea.
I like the tattoos I have a lot. I haven't even regretted some of the less well made ones or some of the less well thought out ones when I was younger and all that stuff because I really fucking love how they look. And I'll be really sad to lose them. As much as I would love to start over and be like, oh, I want a full new traditional fucking chess piece instead of this tribal combination of stuff I have here. But as much as that thought sometimes occurs, I'll be so sad to lose any of them.
Yeah, I think it's I always in my kind of like young years as a tattooer
Aye.
never really understood the people that got like layers, you know, like blast over
Or
big.
like Yalse and I can't remember Remy from Canada as well, who's doing all that stuff with going over black work now and that, which is pretty cool. But same for me, like, what? But I really like my tattoos right now.
Oh, you see, whereas now I think I'm starting to understand it
You're getting
more.
there.
So I think because as I'm kind of maturing as a
Aye.
tattooer
Aye.
now, I've got such an overwhelming urge to just get like a full Japanese leg sleeve. But
Ooh.
my legs are already tattooed. So it's like
Ah.
it would be a blast over,
You
you know,
could buy a
like
silicone leg and didn't like.
a third one. I am going to be getting this arm blasted over this.
Alright. But I also, as much as I don't regret any of my own of that, I've had some semi blastos and some like, well, so do get that as well. Sometimes you change sensibilities and you go get something new.
Yeah, and
It's
like,
not
you know,
regretting the old one. It's just you really want something new and way more cool.
well, I unfortunately was affected by the fact that the person that did my sleeve, which is before I was a tattooer, way before,
Aye.
um, has since been kind of outed as being a homophobe,
Aye.
and
Yeah,
transphobe.
okay.
So
Yeah,
for
okay.
me, I just I don't love it anymore
No, I get
because
that.
of the
I
attachment,
get that.
you know. So I'm going to go to Gwen Douglas in Berlin, who is
Ooh.
one of my favorites anyway, and she's done my
I
hat
get why. I've
this
seen her work. I get why.
uh, and she's become a good friend. She's neurodivergent,
Nice.
and she's going to do like a big black pattern work blast over for me on
Aye.
there, which almost is kind of it's quite it it's starting to give me a feeling of rebirth rather than regret,
No, I get that.
you know.
Because it goes back to the principle we just talked about with reclaiming. Because you might feel, and this is not to therapize you now. I'm also not a therapist, but though so I would argue sociologists could be, but that's a whole separate pet peeve about psychology and all the stuff. But you're still reclaiming yourself because you could still, even if you don't think about it that deeply, sort of feel an association with somebody you don't like anymore and you don't want that connection with that person. So you're still reclaiming your body and your identity from that association.
Yeah, exactly that.
And that was me nerding out hard there for a moment.
No, I think it's, and it's definitely, it's a neurodivergent thing to kind of ruminate and find things very, very difficult to let go of. Like, and I
Mm,
attach people to stuff massively. So I've never been someone that can keep a gift that someone's given me if
no,
that
no.
person isn't in my life anymore, you know?
All right.
I look at it and it's that person, it isn't the thing.
All right.
It's
I mean,
them.
to that step, it very much comes across as it's more of a neurological thing, neurodivergent thing. But I will say that is quite a bit of research showing that even for meaningless tattoos, so to speak, in quotation marks, I don't think there is such a thing. But tattoos without any deep meaning to them, anything like that, they sort of still get sort of temporarily attached to the place you were in your life at the time, or the people you were
100%.
with, and all sorts of stuff like that. And this evolves over time with us as well, as I spoke with Becky about in her episode. But there's still this attachment,
Yes.
and it still attaches to all these people, all that, and it also helps us reminisce in that way. You would say, but it is also for better and worse sometimes. Like it can
Yeah.
be in a bad way, as your sleeve also serves as a somewhat of an example of.
Yeah.
But yeah, but for a lot of people, even without them thinking about it, it sort of does that.
Yeah, they're like they're almost like, passport stamps that passport of your life, you know? Like you'll look at something and it might not even have meaning, but you'll
Aye.
remember where you were in your life at that time when you got
It,
that tattoo.
in a way, and I hate pulling out this quote because I think it's a bit too over dramatized sometimes, but that is sort of the whole journal of the body thing that Johnny Depp, for most people, also mentioned, even though I will say people within the social sciences were saying that way before Johnny Depp did.
Oh, but I think that I mean that goes all the way back to
I don't think Johnny
trial.
Depp ever read any social science and got it from there. I just think he also followed it. It's a very easy analogy to make if you get really into tattoos and think
Yeah.
about your life trajectory. But it was mentioned in social sciences before him, I would argue.
Well, I mean, I would argue that in before social sciences, it was probably spoken about amongst osteoarchaeologists and
Oh,
all of that kind
probably,
of stuff because
probably.
you go all the way back and you're
Even
why
if
did
not in
people
that
start
sense,
marking people?
even if not in that sense or that precise analogy, in some sort of way similar to it, I would imagine.
Like why did we as humans start doing it? Well, we started doing it to mark great hunts or
Yeah, that's at
fantastic
least what the theories we
harvests
get from
or
anthropologists and archaeologists that it was way more to mark achievements and standings and stuff like that. Or, for example, as you say, from a great hunt, you put sort of in a scar to show how the hunt went and have a sort of artifact in your body to tell the story with.
yeah, exactly. And this is a plug if people haven't read Matt Lodder's book. Uh,
Oh, I highly recommend it. I mean,
yeah, it's a
another
fantastic.
guy I fanboy way too much about, and I'm going to interview him hopefully next week, I think.
I am fortunate to have tattooed his wife. So yeah,
Woo!
he's
If
lovely.
memory serves me right, Layla the Impaler.
Yes, yeah, she's an angel. So
I mean, Matt, so is Matt.
I
At
haven't
least when
met
I've
him.
met him.
I've tattooed
I
her more than
I met
once.
him at a conference last year.
Oh, amazing.
The best thing to come out of my PhD was that conference, meeting all sorts of other heavily tattooed academic nerds, including Dr. Lotter himself.
Oh, amazing.
But already found out about ever since 2009 when I read his foreword in the London Tattoo book.
Yeah, he's great and kind of
Absolutely.
uh, there's so much of tattoo history that feeds
People
into
misunderstand and
body autonomy.
misinterpret.
Yeah, and when people are like, oh, it's the golden age of tattooing, I'm like, I'm sorry, but it's been the golden age of tattooing at least 9 times.
Well,
Like,
I would almost argue, and then again, I'm not a historian, so if Matt hears this, sorry, but it's sort of been the golden age for 90 years.
yes, literally,
It's just different. Like, and the thing is, it's just because modern tattooing, people misunderstood it so much because of the stigma back in the day, I would imagine, and how people very cleverly in the upper classes and middle classes hid it from like the working classes in a way that they sort of shared this hobby. Because as Matt points out in his book, and again, read it if you haven't, there's examples of the whole of people in 1915 or somewhere around there. I'm not as good with remembering years as Matt is. Where I think it was Esquire magazine said that, hey, if you're a middle class woman the latest trend is to get a few tattoos, else you're just a stick in the mud. You should expand yourself in your look with some tattoos from Esquire magazine.
Yeah.
So you can't claim that, oh, it was after the 50s, so it was after the 60s. It's been the whole of the 20th century,
Yeah. And
and
I think
probably before as well.
there's a definite, link, like you mentioned, in neurodivergence with being tattooed and a desire to kind of mark who you are as a person and take
Mm.
back ownership of yourself when you're, the hardest thing as a neurodivergent person is that what's exhausting is just constantly trying to just exist and live in a
Yeah,
new
justify existence. Yeah.
world. It's the everything
Well,
in
yeah.
the world is set up.
I would broaden it up even wider than that. Anybody who's ever, like I have myself, I don't know if I'm neurodivergent or not. I'm pretty sure I have ADHD, even though I've not got a diagnosis for it. But I always got bullied and felt different, and I never wanted to like follow fashions or anything like that. And I was always ostracized for that in a way. And I fell in love with tattooing when I was very young. It's again, same thing. It was not because it was popular or anything like that. It wasn't at the time either. But that still helped me sort of anchor myself, as
Yeah.
one of my favorites, Paul Sweetman, would say. And it helped me sort of say, hey, no matter what you do to me, this I can keep. No matter how you force me to wear this or do that or keep me out of this event or away from this thing or beat me up for buying a comic book or whatever, like I have this.
Yeah.
And it sort of proves how committed I am to myself, no matter what you guys do.
Yeah, exactly. It's
And I
like
think that happens. It's not, and I think Paula very much agrees with this. But it's always good to bend it in neon, as some people say, just to make sure there's as little of an misunderstanding as I can get there to be. It's
yeah,
not just neurodivergent people, but for a lot of people, the tattoos can help you, even if they don't have deep meaning at all. Even if it's just, I like this band, I like this fucking hobby, I like this shit. It helps you sort of commit and show commitment to yourself.
yeah,
And in a term I like to use, claim yourself.
yeah, definitely. And I think if you get to a point when you're being tattooed where you're able to, consciously get into that meditative state where you're drifting and your mind is kind of just allowed to wander and you can't go anywhere, like you're in a place and you can't go anywhere, you only have your mind to explore. So in the same way that people will go into a sensory deprivation tank to get that experience, or in the 60s and 70s they would take LSD and magic mushrooms to try and unlock these areas of their mind, tattooing does become like that, not just for the client, but especially for neurodivergent people
Mm.
who tattoo. That was the
Yeah.
hardest thing in 2020 for me in the lockdowns,
Aye.
was tattooing people is my safe space. That's when
Aye.
I am able to completely unmask and be me,
Aye.
because it's my train set and I'll play
I
with it.
think I think it might always have been that because there's always been these eccentrics in the tattoo world. And I think a lot of them might just very much have been undiagnosed somewhere on the spectrum.
Oh, hell
Uh,
yes. There's so many.
not at all of them, not all of them, but a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
That's I often think that, especially when you hear Matt Lawler talk about some of these old tattooers from way back in the day in his podcast and his books and stuff like that. Because there are these eccentric people that are very heavily misunderstood by society, but within this space and this art form and this industry, they find a place to be themselves.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
very much so. And what a beautiful sentiment to sort of, because else I am going to keep you for the night, Paula, if we don't round off soon. But what a beautiful sentiment to sort of pace it off with and sort of get us off the high beat and switch gear down a bit as we round off the interview. I just want to ask, actually, it's not going to be that lighthearted, but it's going to be on a nicer tone, I hope. What advice, Paula, would you have to anybody thinking about getting a tattoo?
Um, my advice honestly would be, you have to find a balance between not being reckless and impulsive, but also not overthinking it and strangling it.
Mm,
Um,
very much agree with this. Very much agree with this.
yeah, it's really the most important thing is to make sure that you find somebody who
Mm.
everything they do you love, even if it's
Mm.
not something you get yourself, and then give that person a loose idea and trust them. And that's
Two
not
pieces
even,
of advice I really agree with there.
yeah, like that's not even, I don't think, about the artist being trusted. I think it is more that people don't trust their own judgment in picking
Mm.
something, and that comes with age, I believe. So which is why you tend to get the younger crowds that are a lot more kind
Mm.
of anxious and like, not, I don't like the terms because they all have negative connotations, but like
Aye.
nitpicky and kind of very
I'm sure.
detail oriented. And I understand that, you know, especially being younger now in the age of social media, I mean,
Mm.
you know, I have a couple of things that I always say in the studio, and I think they kind of ring true with this: is you're not a hotel and you don't need a theme.
I'm sorry, Paula. That is amazing.
It's so true though. Like you're not a boutique hotel. You don't need themed body
I'm
parts.
sorry
Like
for
it's
laughing.
so
It's such a good
silly.
point. It was just I did not expect that type of metaphor right there.
Sorry.
I love a good metaphor. I love a good metaphor. But geez, I did not
And then
expect
the
that.
only other thing really is just like, you know, you're not a hotel, you don't need a theme. And at the same time, all good tattoos go with good tattoos. You know,
Huh?
they all go well together. Like
Oh right, that's what you
grey,
meant. That
mixed Japanese
for
with
one
Western.
point, I confused myself for a moment there. That's what happened.
Like they look great together. It doesn't, you know,
Aye.
people don't need to constantly, oh, well, I can only get black because I've got black on my arm.
Ah,
Like, don't get tattooed for the aesthetic. Get stuff you
I mean,
like. It doesn't
of
have
course,
to
it
match.
could be very impressive when people have just one style in their body, but that doesn't mean you have to, or that it won't look like I have a few different styles of my body. I still think it looks incredible together.
Yeah,
You know,
totally. Totally. It's
absolutely.
a tapestry. Tapestries aren't the
Yeah.
same all over. They're different
Oh.
everywhere.
Well, I very much agree with your advice about, you should think and ruminate a bit, but it's also you can also scare yourself out of getting it
Mhm.
ever. And you'll regret that too. Like my roommate was like that until I really sat down and had a talk with him. My former roommate, I should say, not live on my own right now, but my best mate when we lived together, he was like that. And then I finally talked him into, hey, you've talked about this to two since you almost got to know each other when you were 16 and I was no, when you were 19 and I was 22. Now you're 25.
Yeah,
You're
like
still
wow.
talking about this tattoo, and you've yet to get it. And you now know a really cool tattoo artist here in Copenhagen. She's sadly dead now, but at the time we were friends with this cool American artist who lived in Copenhagen, married to a Danish guy and all that. They call Erica from America. And she was so cool, half Hawaiian, half Japanese.
Oh wow.
And he felt so safe with her, and he'd become a mate of the studio as well, despite having no tattoos and all that. They just really got on. And I said, just fucking get the tattoo, man. Like it was
It's
to a
just,
point where even his parents were so on board that his dad, which never happened to me, my parents love my tattoos now, and they were never like most traditional parents or anything like that. Very accepting of it from the start, but I never heard them ever say, "We'll pay for that one."
oh wow, yeah, like that would
Yeah,
never.
they sort of did that here, just about with him. Like they were like, "Oh no, we'll help you pay for it." And I was like, "There's no reason to wait anymore." Like
Hmm.
you even had the design idea nailed down for a good while now. Like now you just gotta jump in.
Yeah, no one ever dies really
No.
thinking about the things that they done. They only ever think about the things they
I,
wish they
I,
had done.
I will say also this. It is smart though if you're, especially if you're, I'm probably mainly talking to the younger people, especially, or anybody getting their first tattoo if they're not sure if they can handle being tattooed. Go with somewhere you can hide
Yeah,
for the placement. Like he went for the upper arm, he can easily have that away. If he ever thinks I'm never gonna get another tattoo, cool. He has one cool tattoo there. He decides who sees it.
yeah, exactly.
Because starting out with your face or your hands,
No,
no matter
and
how well done the tattoo is, it is going to be a lot on you. Even I always want to give this example, and I've given it before in the podcast. Even the positive attention, it's going to be a lot for you to handle. If not, you're not used to people staring, asking questions, wanting to see your body, wanting you to show off, and all that stuff. It's a lot,
it is a lot.
and it
It is.
starts out so quick. It's not when you get as tattooed as Laura. It's not even at my level. It begins. It's way before.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
really is. And
it's
no good tattooer will do your hand or your face as your first tattoo. Trust me.
I've at least not met many. I've not met
Okay.
many that do that. You need to be a friend of them, or something crazy's happened if they want to do that.
Yeah.
If they're really good tattooer, most of them will care enough about their clients that they're like, no, mate, you gotta try out being tattooed.
Yeah, totally. It's all about, making sure that people have control of their body. That is their
Yeah,
decision. But I also have to live with my own decisions to do
yeah.
that to someone. And
Plus,
that's where,
on a very basic level, you don't want to have every client running back to you regretting a tattoo because they started off with the face and the fucking hand, and then you just have to, they want them all removed.
exactly. There's
That's
a
also your art.
very delicate balance, and that
Aye.
is where there are grey areas for sure. So,
That's a good note to end on. A very delicate balance. Right. So now, only thing I have left to do, Paula, is I really want to thank you for coming on here.
oh no, thank you for having
A
me.
journey, very quick journey, because it's not been a long time the podcast has been around, from fan to guest.
Yeah,
And I've
that's
really
great.
enjoyed this episode. It's been quite a laugh ride.
Oh, good, good. I'm really glad. I'm really glad. And I have discovered people from listening and watching on YouTube that I didn't know of.
Oh, that's so
So
nice.
yeah, which is great. And I've, sent it to lots of people. And it's just
Oh,
so nice to have more things spoken about from an academic perspective within tattooing, and it just
I
helps to
try.
dispel the myth about tattooed people and people who tattoo people being like scumbags and degenerates,
I
because we're not.
I try. I do very much try. I'm so bad with praise.
Yeah, same.
But Paula, please, whatever you want to plug, now's your time. The floor is yours.
Oh, crikey. What do I want to plug? I
Well, there's at
am.
least Black Sheep in Bristol.
Yeah, so blacksheepbristol.com if you want to check out our artists. There's a lot of us, lots of neurodivergent artists, lots of different styles. We have space for guests. If anybody wants to come and guest with us,
Ooh.
they are more than welcome.
And I hear Bristol's an awesome place. Not been yet myself. I do want to go.
It's super fun. You can catch me at the Cape Town Tattoo Convention. You can
Whoa.
catch me at the Wild Tattoo Show in Belgium this year, and at Literary Ink in Tennessee in July. And if you want to keep on top of where I'm going to be, you can follow me on Instagram at Paula Castle Tattoos, and you can also find me under the same name on places like Goodreads and stuff like that. So, and on Spotify if you want to check out what I'm listening to.
And you'll also find a very funny episode. She was on another podcast
Oh,
called
yeah, I have
The
been on quite a
Blastover.
few. So
Uh,
yeah, so
well, I only know the Blastover, but I did listen to that one, and that was quite good.
yeah, that's you can tell that we're friends, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So
Right.
yeah,
Thank you so much, Paula. And
you're very welcome.
to everybody watching or listening in, whatever you're doing, your preference. See you in a couple of weeks. Hello, everybody. As I always say, what an episode, and incredible to talk to Paula Castle. I know for a lot of people that have already started following this podcast, some of you are actually thanks to her, and she was originally a fan herself. It's been quite amazing getting to know Paula as well, behind the scenes, and I couldn't wait to do this episode with her. A topic that is very near and dear to Paula's own experiences, being diagnosed late, as she talked about, with autism herself. And it's been incredible to talk about this. I think it's worth getting into with the growingly diverse world of tattooing, where a lot of people, I think, are actually somewhere on the spectrum, especially a lot of the creative minds that are both attracted to being tattooed and performing tattoos on other people. And also think it was incredible to talk about how she not only tries to make a good work environment for herself with her own diagnosis, but also make a space where her clients can come and feel welcome and accepted for who they are. And on that note, it was interesting to hear Paula's thoughts on how people sometimes advertise safe space without actually creating one. And I agree fully with her. It's not up to the person to declare their studio a safe space or a space where people can come and be accepted for who they are. It is up to the clients that go there. So I think that's a worthy lesson for anybody that enjoyed this episode. On that note, about safe spaces and diversity. Next time, we're going to be talking to a lovely tattooer from Germany called Carly. She is incredible. She's part of sort of the new generation. That's what we're going to be talking about as well. The younger generation of tattooers now who are embracing social media full on and using it in some rather creative ways at times. And I'm not going to be talking about TikTok dances and such, no, so don't worry. But instead, we're going to be talking about the incredible way that Carly uses social media to inform her clientele about what a tattoo session is like, what they need to prepare, how the aftercare is, but also about what a session with her specifically is like, and trying to challenge some misconceptions about who can get tattoos and what body that gets tattooed is like, and all that sort of stuff. I think it's lovely. I think it's great. She's promoting more diversity and acceptance of the community in her own way, and I can't wait for you guys to enjoy that episode as well in a couple of weeks' time. So see you then.